Hi folks, you're with Pewter City Gym today, and we're gonna go ahead and take a deep dive into a topic near and dear to all of us. Water. Specifically the water starter for our Fakémon region. To be honest, I rarely ever start out a Pokemon game with the water starter. Normally I pick fire, and in a couple of games, really only Pearl and Sword, I pick the grass starter from my main run through. This isn't because I dislike any of the water starter options especially, though I'm not a huge fan of Empoleon or Samurott. I mean, Squirtle, Mudkip, Totodile, Sobble, these are all awesome Pokemon, super iconic. I think it's more that there are a lot of water types to pick from in every game, as it's one of the most well-populated types, and there are water types I like more than the starters in pretty much every generation. All this just to say my challenge for myself with this design was to create a water type that is so fun and so interesting, I'd be happy to pick it at the start of my adventure if I was playing this out as a game. The region is based on Southern California and the general surrounding areas, and one thing that we have no shortage of is coastline. There are so many amazing animals that populate the wetter parts of the landscape, but there are two conventions that we need to stick to for the water type starter. One is that they need to relate back to some kind of a weapon. Two is that they can't be an animal that's entirely aquatic. They need to be a critter that can exist on land as well as in the water. Initially, I wanted to work with the shellfish. Stuff like mussels, oysters, barnacles. They cling to rocks and are often exposed at low tide, meaning that technically they're okay to be on land at least some of the time. The problem for me came with the overall design. It's hard to take something that is essentially a blob of goop stuck in a harder outer coating and make that a starter Pokemon. Starters have their own kind of feel to them. They're cute, they have limbs, eyes, smiles. They can strike dynamic poses. How far can you push a shellfish in that direction before it's no longer the thing that you started with? If you give a mussel muscles, is it really even a mussel anymore? Though I will admit that a water fighting type muscle Pokemon based on a bodybuilder from Venice Beach is something percolating in the back of my mind. We'll see. I have some sketches that I did while trying to figure the initial idea out. Let me know in the comments if you want to see those. Anyway, there's already seal and crab Pokemon that are perfectly fine at what they do. So, in the end, I went with the favorite animal of mine. The seagull. Yeah, you heard me. I love seagulls, and I don't care who knows it. I've taken a lot of seagull photos in my lifetime, and I am an inexhaustible well of weird seagull facts. Wingull is not that interesting of a Pokemon, so I'll pick up that dropped torch and birth a seagull Pokemon willing to live up to the promise of this highly misunderstood family of animals. It's okay, Wingull, I still love you. Anyway, let's head on over to the lab and do some design work. So, bird Pokemon starters generally have a couple of features in common. I did a couple of sketches before thinking about these design conventions, so you can take a look at those. But with all canon bird starters, Torchic, Piplup, and Rowlet, they have some common features. Dot eyes, small cute beaks. In the case of Torchic and Piplup, round heads on round bodies. Rowlet is just round all over. Like I said in my video on our fire starter, Flamboyant, there's a fine line to walk between inspiration and imitation. My main concern is that it might look too close to Piplup because blue is the water starter color, so I have to be careful not to make them look too terribly similar. Also, following along with the starter personality triangle of cool, funny, and serious, this Pokemon needs to be cool. Pancalise is our comic relief, and Flamboyant is the serious one, so we have cool lift. Water, cool, I think we can make that work thematically. The idea for this Pokemon came to me fairly quickly, given the design parameters that we've now established. It's gonna have a vaguely nautical look to it, of course. Original? Not terribly. There are plenty of nautically inspired water birds out there. Hopefully we can get a level of shine on this one that makes it stand out. I gave it a cool, slick back, but still dynamic hairstyle. Feather style. Sketching out different poses for it also helped me solidify the personality. Colors? Now that's the harder part. We can't do white and blue because it's so overdone, and again, I don't want it looking too close to Piplup or Wingull. Juvenile seagulls are actually usually brown with black and gray. Brown for a water starter though? No, I don't think so. Tan and green are out because we want it to be pretty distinct from our grass and fire starters. In the end, I went with blue and pink. I think this combo still gets across what we're looking for. Super young baby birds are pink in general before the feathers grow in anyway. It also looks something like a flamingo now, and I'm not mad at that. We'll say it gets its pigment from snacking on a primarily pink sea creature and add another layer to the lore. And here we have Ensurf, the Gulchick Pokemon. Ensurf are born white, but due to the diet of mashed sea life fed to them by their parents, they turn a vibrant shade of pink within hours of hatching. They're good listeners and follow orders without question. These would be the base stats, and here are your moves. The name comes from Ensign, the entry-level rank in the Navy and Coast Guard. Surf? Fairly self-explanatory, right? This kid is bright and clever, generally happy and willing to battle in the best way it knows how. I imagine it being a very supportive partner Pokemon, squawking encouragement from the sidelines even when it isn't battling. For the middle stage, I wanted the overall weaponry theme to become more prevalent. The rounder, cuter aspects of the design need to be chipped away to something more angular, and as a result, there's some stretching of proportions involved. Of course, Wingull evolves into Pelipper, and while the logic there is sound, seagulls and pelicans are often spotted together, we can't just repeat that, so I'm going to include some cormorant and heron details. Look at this poor fella, lost the end of his beak at some point. Anyway, remember what I said in the last video about designing long-legged creatures? That kind of goes out the window here, just because as a middle evolution, this thing has a duty to look awkward. We're going to amplify those flamingo-ish proportions to get some extra gangle in there. Gangle? Is that a word? But it's gotten stronger and is proud of this. Let's sketch a pose where it's showing off a bit, right? I wanted it to have kind of an old school sailor feel to it as well. The beak gets sharper to show those kind of heron and cormorant aspects. I imagine this thing diving down and slicing through the water to terrorize schools of Remoraid and Finneon. In terms of color, I muted the pink a little bit more towards the cool side, edging towards purple. I darkened the blue a little bit as well, and accentuated these with black for the beak and legs. The slick back hair goes away, and it's replaced by a shape that's supposed to evoke the idea of a military haircut and those old school navy caps. And here we have Gangully, the greedy gull Pokemon. This Pokemon eats anything it can get its beak on as it tries to pack on weight to match its increased height. It still follows orders, but given some freedom, it can improvise strategies fairly well on its own. Here are your base stats, and here are the learned moves. The name comes from gull, of course, and gangly because, well, look at those limbs. It also contains the word gang, which, you know, signifies that in the wild they'd attack in groups like actual seagulls do. Plus gangplank, you know, nautical stuff. Now, on to the final design. This guy is going to be more streamlined. That extra length it gained in the second stage will be rounded out by some heft and a lot of sharp pointy bits. Water-type starters and weaponry led me down a pretty obvious design path. Harpoons. Let's kick that up a notch and make them poison harpoons. I want this thing to have an almost prehistoric feel to it. Not in an obvious way like our grass starter's Stegosaurus inspirations, but it should feel ominous and huge and have a lot of presence. Its angular head and large body should give it a kind of imposing aura. Colors will be a more blue-purple to show both water and poison typing. The blues are dark and severe looking, and we've amped up the amount of black because, again, intimidation is this Pokemon's whole deal. Still, I wanted to keep the shading pretty soft to show that the feathers have a little fluff to them. I showed my wife the finished product and she gave me a cool idea. Give it some flair with an epaulet on the shoulder to denote rank. I figured a clamshell or, you know, scalchop would serve the role and be thematically appropriate. Also to change the beak color to make it less visually confusing. Meet ALBATROSS, the Admiral Pokemon. It stakes out a territory and will order all the Insurf and Gangly under its command to mercilessly attack intruders. It eats Tentacool and other poisonous water types to gain a potent blend of toxins it will use to destroy its foes. The shinier its Scalchop epaulets, the more respect it commands. Base stats are here, and here's the learned moves list. ALBATROSS's name comes from albatross and toxin. I wanted it to have kind of a prestigious sounding name, and I think there's something kind of regal about the way that this name sounds. I just love the thought of these things soaring around in the sky out over the open ocean, circling for prey and scaring old-timey sea captains. Yar, if you see an arrow-shaped shadow pass across the bow of your boat, best head back ashore, lads. The voyage be doomed to failure, and you'll be swimming with the lantern before long. The day me old man saw one was his last day on the sea. He came ashore right away and opened a bait shop. Here are the shinies, and this is what the egg would look like too. In terms of ability, Torrent is of course the standard. For the hidden ability though, I'm gonna say Storm Drain. It will draw in any water type moves on the field and use them to boost its own attack stat. Well, there we go! We have all of our 3 starter families done in design. Here they are all together. I'm honestly pretty proud of them, and I like the way that they look as a group. Usually starter groups have a theme to them, at least since Generation 4 anyway, but arguments can be made for earlier gens too. The theme of these starters as a group is movie genres. It breaks down like so. The Pankalee's line is monster flicks, from kaiju movies like Godzilla to the creepy old school Universal monsters featuring unquiet residents of the grave, to more recent monster movies like Jurassic Park and or World. Flambaugh's family is centered around action movies, things with a lot of special effects, explosions, speed, hardware. If Flambaugh was in a movie, it would be directed by Michael Bay. Michael Ba? And Insurf is war movies, old school naval thrillers and submarine films especially. I thought that worked well with the weapon elements. Which of these 3 hopefuls would you be likely to pick in a hypothetical playthrough, trainers? Let me know in the comments. So now that we have our regional starters, we move on to all of our other standard groups of Pokemon. Route 1 rodents and birds, early game bugs, early game canine, regional variants, and eventually pseudo-legendaries and actual legendaries too. Single stage badasses, 2-stage reptiles, Objectmon, whatever new version of Charizard it can come up with, because there has to be one of those in every game from now on. I'm kidding about the last part. Or am I? Let me know in the comments.
And we have a lot of other fun things to design as well. Rival characters, professors, the region itself, maybe new types. Who knows? The sky's the limit. Unless we go to space. Or ultra space.
Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in and watching. I really do appreciate it a lot. You've been with Pewter City Jim today, and I'm looking forward to catching you in the next video. Take care. Bye!